Can you believe we published a podcast last week?
I know. What's even more ridiculous is how many bloody downloads we got.
I know. How many?
Hang on.
I think we're sitting at 206 at the moment.
206.
Yeah.
And I've actually got the statistics to hand for once. According to thepodcasthost.com, if you have more than 26 downloads, you're in the top 50% of podcasts. More than 72, you're in the top 25%. And more than 231, you're in the top 10%. So at 206, I absolutely cannot do that maths.
No, we tried.
We really did try. But yeah, so almost the top 10%.
Yeah, which is insane.
Absolutely insane. And we're so incredibly, incredibly grateful, even if you did just tune in to laugh at us.
Yeah. And I mean, it probably is a lot of friends and family,
Yes.
you know, helping us out and supporting us, but we appreciate that so much. But aside from that, we know we've had so much feedback from people.
We made that reel which shared some feedback that we'd had.
Yeah.
And knowing that we've actually are making a difference is just so incredibly emotional.
It is. I was welling up last week when,
Yeah.
you know, when we got some of the messages from people just saying that just after listening to one episode
Yeah.
of our podcast, we've helped them make some positive changes towards seeking a diagnosis
Yeah.
and getting help put in place. So
And that's the thing as well, is the more support that we can get, which we're already so appreciative, is the further that the message can be spread. And that's really the point, is trying to get the message out there and make as much noise as we can. So without further ado, here is episode 2.
yeah, it is.
ADHD as females, ADHD AF, ADHD as females, the podcast.
Hi, I'm Dawn.
Hi, I'm Laura, and
we are
ADHD
AF.
AF. Seriously. We are two neurodivergent neighbours who moved to the same street at the same time, at the same age, with the same undiagnosed disability. What are the chances?
Since discovering the enormous impact ADHD has had on our lives and the horrifying numbers of missing undiagnosed females, it has become our mission to make some serious noise.
We want to use our voices to raise awareness, break the stigma, and share our experiences in the hope that they help others.
So join us for a chat, or as it's called up here in Aberdeen, a blether.
Trigger warning, we will be covering some really sensitive topics, so please do have a read of the description of each episode before listening.
It's important to note that we are not medical professionals, we're not therapists or coaches, we're not qualified to offer advice or support. What we will do is share our experiences alongside resources and information from professionals. We will talk over each other and we will go off topic and forget the point mid-sentence.
We are both assigned female at birth, which means that we can only speak from the experience of life as AFAB people. However, ADHD AF is an inclusive space. Whatever your gender, you are very welcome here.
Yes, you are.
ADHD as females, ADHD AF.
Have you got your Batmobile with you?
All right, don't rub it in. So, what are we talking about, Dawn?
Superpowers.
Is ADHD a superpower? For any of you that follow us on socials, we did a little reel.
It's not a reel, let's be honest. A
yeah.
reel is less than a minute.
Okay, we tried to do a reel, but it's
failed.
actually 2 minutes long, and it could have been a lot longer, but we had to cut loads out. But hopefully it still makes sense.
Yeah.
So we were exploring the growing trend, or a trend that's been around for a little while, particularly on social media, about ADHD being a superpower. And we wanted to do that because it's something that's quite interesting to us. We are of the same agreement that for us personally, it doesn't feel like a superpower, but for some people it really does. And we just want to really clarify that if you feel that ADHD is a superpower, then that's amazing. We're not in any way critical of how anybody perceives themselves and ADHD. It's just how we feel about it.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't feel like a superpower to me. Definitely there are positives.
Yes.
And we'll go into that as we talk and discuss. But I fail to see why having ADHD is a superpower. It just there's yeah.
Well, we've actually got a really interesting comment come through on that not a real. One of the followers has kindly given us some feedback, which we just want to say we really, really appreciate. So if anybody wants to give us any feedback at any point, we are all ears and we love to hear from you. So I'm just going to...
maybe articulates it a little bit better than we did.
So here we go. The person says, ADHD as a superpower is said in a kind of inspiration porn way by most, mainly NTs, so neurotypicals, let's be honest. But it's more like the graphic novel concept of a superpower. Every benefit comes with a downside. My ability to hyperfocus is amazing, but I don't get to choose when it activates, nor what I hyperfocus on. My memory for faces is incredible, but I can't remember names or what I was thinking 8.735 milliseconds ago. Superpowers aren't pure or perfect. They always come at a heavy, heavy cost. So thank you for sending that to us, because that is really super interesting and we couldn't agree more.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we had just focused on the concept more as potentially, as has been argued, a form of toxic positivity, which diminishes the struggles that so many of us face by just saying, oh, look, you've got a superpower. And in actual fact, we hadn't seen it in that graphic novel sense of actually there being that dark side of it.
Yeah,
so
and of course. You look at all the superheroes, Batman, Superman, and there's always a dark side to it.
Yeah, and carrying a heavy burden, a heavy price to pay. Now, for both of us, we feel that... sorry, I don't want to speak for you, but I feel like we both feel that not having the control of when you activate whatever your superpower is, or the multiple superpowers that ADHD
turn
gives
it on
you,
and off.
Then without that control element, that's why it doesn't, to us, feel like a superpower. So, for example, when you think about, as that comment said, about hyperfocus, definitely for me, like growing up, everything, I could only focus in imminent danger. At the last very minute, I actually handed in 3 pieces of English literature coursework at the very last minute, and I'd done all 3 the night before, and I just hadn't slept.
Yeah.
And so there's times when I've been like, go gadget, write an essay, because I can write essays, and been like, why can I not focus? I know I can do this, but just not being able to control it. So
you're constantly living on the edge.
Yeah.
You're there, and you can't do anything until, like you say, something is imminent.
The very last minute.
And the very last minute. And then
it kicks in.
It's like when I'm doing my uni work, and like I left school at 16, so I don't have a great education. I didn't pay attention at school very well, and I was always getting into trouble and causing trouble, and I probably displayed more of the typical ADHD symptoms that are associated with boys than most females.
Disruptive, fidgety.
I was basically a little,
I was going to say it.
A madam. I'm not going to say the S word, but I was a little madam, and I got into a lot of trouble. And but when it comes to uni just now, I see the same things repeating as I did at school, in that I can't. At school, I couldn't do homework. Mm-hmm. And with uni, I struggle to do any self-directed tasks. And it's not until the very last minute that I actually kick in and hyper-focus and get things done. And with my deadlines for uni, what I found is that when there's a deadline looming, I actually have to switch off everything else that's going on and hyper-focus on what I'm doing. And that means I can't wash myself properly. I can't clean my house properly.
Everything else falls
apart because I am so focused on what I'm doing and I have to be in that zone. I don't eat properly. Like,
Yeah.
self-care just goes out the window for me to be able to get that thing done.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a thing that you maybe isn't as fun. If something's really fun, hyper-focused to the max and I can lose myself for hours. But if I'm trying to get a task done, the urgency is there, but it's not a task I enjoy, I have to force myself into a hole, essentially.
Yeah. And I think I'd just like to sort of put in there as well, and hope that we don't go off on too much of a tangent, is that when we talk about, say, I think I can speak for most people with neurodivergent brains here in saying what I'm about to say would make sense. But just on the off chance there are any neurotypical people listening to this, that waiting for the deadline to come for the hyper-focus to kick in, it isn't sitting twiddling your thumbs having a lovely old time, thank you very much.
Absolutely
It's not
not.
like, there's quite a lot of, because we are sort of touching on this trend, there's a lot of TikToks about ADHD, and I can't remember the exact wording of it, but it's a bit like, did you relax today? Like, did you do your work today? No, I didn't. Did you relax instead? Oh, no, not that either, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're sitting there going, oh, brilliant, I'm going to leave this to last minute, so I've got 3 days to do whatever and sit on my ass and have a lovely old time. That time, for me anyway, is spent worrying about the thing.
Task paralysis.
Task paralysis. And
Yeah.
sometimes, and this is really ridiculous, I will worry so much about the thing and think my way every which way round the thing that I've almost feel like I've done the thing. I think that I have put valuable time and been working on something when actually all I've been doing is worrying about not doing the thing.
I can plan
So
in
it's
my
not
head.
fun.
Yeah, I can plan in my head exactly what I want to do and how I want to do it and be ready in my head but still not be able to actually start the task.
Yeah.
And that's so frustrating because you're just constantly being like, right, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But you don't. You just don't do it.
Sometimes it's a case of, like task paralysis and not knowing where to start. Whereas other times it can just be, for me, in my experience, is like overwhelm and fear of getting it wrong. So worried that you're not going to get it right that you're afraid to even try. And definitely when I was doing, say, my GCSEs, I remember academia just being so important in my family, and I felt just such an enormous amount of pressure to do well, and I didn't want to let them down. It was almost like, well, I understand now that it was ADHD, but at the time it was almost as if my brain was saying, well, if you try and you mess this up, then that's really bad, but at least if you haven't really tried, then you won't feel like a failure, or some kind of twisted logic that I had in there. But
I was the same, but like I think I had just come to accept the fact that I was a failure, and so if I did things and failed, it's just what Dawn does, It's just she just
that's so interesting.
gives up.
But so now if we go back
Did we digress?
to trends, part of the reason, as I said, that we wanted to touch on this superhero topic and do that real in inverted commas was that there is a trend. ADHD is having a moment, and it has
Massive
exploded
moment.
all over social media, and that is, on the one hand, absolutely fantastic, and on the other, as ever, there is a backlash to that.
You know what? How I think a really good way to describe it is, when you really like a band and they're totally unheard of, no one's heard this band, and you're like, oh my god, I love this band, and you get really into them, and you're like, yeah, they're ace, and then all of a sudden they hit the mainstream, and they're everywhere, and every Tom, Dick, and Harry is just loving this band, and then you're a little bit secretly annoyed, being like, yeah, they were my band. That's my band.
Oh, and also, it's a bit like if said band got too much radio play, then everyone starts to go, oh god, like they're rubbish, I'm so sick of that.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. How did my voice just go there? I don't even know where that came from.
But you're happy for the band.
Yeah, I mean, 100%.
You're so happy for the band, but you're just like, that was my thing. And it's very similar with ADHD.
And I think you know, with regards to this, it is difficult because it's so fantastic because so many women are seeing the potential ADHD traits in themselves that, well, we just didn't know about, right?
Yeah.
So none of us knew about it. So more people are finding out about it. More people are seeking diagnosis, which is just absolutely bloody fantastic. And it's
So
watch your words, it is strange that it's taken TikTok of all things to really spread that message so far. The negative, obviously, is that people are now saying that it's a bandwagon, that it's trendy, that it's cool, and what now everyone thinks that like neurodivergence is cool, so now we're saying it because it's cool, and that's not really okay. I actually saw
It's not okay.
I saw a video. I was in a group on Facebook, and a woman said that she had gone to get an ADHD diagnosis, and the doctor had said to her, you just want this to be the excuse for your problems because now it's cool and trendy to say.
And I've seen that so many times over all of the different social media things that I follow with regards to ADHD. So many people coming forward saying that they've gone to the doctor and they're kind of being told, nah, it's just a trend.
It's
like
a
you're
fad,
just jumping on
a bandwagon.
You've just diagnosed yourself from a TikTok video,
Yes.
and there's lots of that being thrown about.
Whereas
And
actually, in this instance, TikTok for this subject has become a fantastic educational tool.
Yeah.
Which is reaching all sorts of people that otherwise would never have known.
I mean, bear in mind that not everything you see and hear on TikTok.
Oh God.
TikTok. On TikTok is gonna be, you know,
Legit.
legit. Yes.
Yes.
Thanks for the words. I lost
Too
them.
legit to quit.
So you have to be very careful with what you're listening to and what you're watching,
Yeah.
etc.
Although, I don't know, I think that there's every chance that Mr. Facebook Man is a lizard. So I think that that's probably gospel. But that aside,
Yeah.
so yeah, we've jumped on the bandwagon. So
Yeah.
here we are on the bandwagon, being really cool and trendy, ADHD women, and then we go and jump on another bandwagon by starting a podcast.
our own podcast.
Every man and his dog has a podcast, so we're double bandwagon jumper honors.
But I
Because
think,
why the hell not?
yeah, and also, I just think that, you know, we're two females that are 39. I know you're not quite there
quite.
yet, 38. But we've struggled our whole lives.
Yeah.
We really have. And to get all serious and everything. But yeah, like our whole lives could have been a lot easier if we had these diagnoses when we were younger.
Yeah.
And so if we make a noise about it and get more awareness out there, then hopefully we can make an impact on someone else's life
Yeah.
to get them a diagnosis earlier so that they don't have to deal with the struggles that we've had to deal with.
Exactly. And it works small scale and big scale. If you think about it in terms of exactly like you just said, if we could help one person
Yeah.
or take, you know, 1 decade of struggle off somebody's life, that would be absolutely the best thing ever. But also, with ADHD in women finally getting some attention, like if you join the movement and you use your voice, like what can we do here? Potentially we could join together and make enough bloody noise that change could potentially happen on a bigger scale.
And that's it. And it's not just about people with ADHD or potentially with ADHD that we're trying to impact and reach out to. Like, it's people that the neurotypical people that may or may not listen to this to get them to understand us as well. Because God knows how many times I have been misunderstood over the years and seen as rude and interrupting and all of these other things.
Oversensitive, over-emotional. Yeah.
And if there's just a little bit of information out there to help everyone understand it, then it benefits everyone.
It really does. It really does. I kind of want to go back just a second to our real in inverted commas. Because
The real.
So part of the reason why we did that, sorry, that was really inarticulate, I could not get the words out, is that we wanted to use our strengths and weaknesses to highlight some of the issues that we personally come up against.
Yes.
So within that, we looked at, for example, my complete and utter over enthusiasm about an idea and actually thinking about it so much that I hadn't actually even communicated it. We looked
at my
at
inability to get out of bed in the morning.
Exactly. And then impulsivity, being easily led. You came straight over to the house. And then, you know, going through, I forgot something incredibly important, which actually in the extended version, I'd already baked a cake for and definitely knew that it was coming up, but just got so excited about this one idea that I basically missed something really important. And within that is quite a serious subject, which we will definitely elaborate on in another episode, is how that affects our relationships.
Yeah.
And so people, especially neurotypical people, not understanding that sometimes our actions are they're not indicative of our emotions. So our intention is being presumed when actually ADHD has taken hold and we have just forgotten something because our brains are wired up differently. And
it happens all the time.
Making people feel unimportant. You know, you said, if you don't mind me saying, on reflection of the last podcast, you were a bit worried that at times when we were talking and we were discussing things through, you were giving your experience, you were relating your experience, which, by the by, is the point of the podcast. But what you meant was in terms of how that kind of, you've become aware that has come across in the real world, is that sometimes it might seem like you just want to talk about yourself or something.
I am very aware in that when I talk to people, I relate. Mm-hmm. So if I'm having a conversation with someone and they're talking about a time they went on holiday and I've been to that same place, I will then chirp in with my, you know, story about that place that I was on holiday as well. And, you know, it's how conversations work. People bounce off each other. But sometimes it can come across as in like, you know, story topping or like she just wants to speak about herself. Yes. And that's not the case. It's just
actually, it's about leveling and being like, oh, I empathise. I understand what you're going through. But actually, we're not necessarily reading the signals that now would be a time to listen, as opposed to we're actually being empathetic and saying, I hear you, I'm with you. But it can be misread.
Absolutely.
So, yes.
And maybe I don't ask enough questions, whereas you're really good at asking questions. And that's just some of the small differences, I guess, between us as well.
Absolutely. There was absolutely something else that I wanted to say.
I know there was a point. There was a point to this part, and
it's gone.
Working memory. That's something we'll talk about.
Oh, that was yes, we will. That was it with the real in inverted commas, was that we played to our strengths as well. So the point is, like, as we touched upon in the last podcast, we were talking about how we are really fun and young. We're juvenile, hence the name of the podcast. You know, we want to have fun and we're spontaneous, and we will be those idiots that will run around a busy beach surrounded by people dressed like idiots with everyone laughing at us and not caring. So within that, it's all about like playing to your strengths, superpowers in inverted commas, whilst also acknowledging that this comes as we said, with a heavy burden. And to feel like you don't have control of yourself is a horrible thing, and I'm really worried that I'm repeating myself, and if I am, I'm sorry. Is that it's been said that sometimes having ADHD is like your brain has a brain of its own. And I wish I knew who said that, but of course I don't. But it is sometimes that your brain, like a neurotypical brain, would take all of the information and make a decision based on the best outcome for all of the criteria. Whereas often, and we can only speak for ourselves here in this situation, in our experience, sometimes our brains really do work against us and do not have our best interests or responsibilities or whatever at heart. It's just acting on impulse, seeking the chemicals that it is lacking. And that we don't really have control over.
It's why I will always pick the fun thing. like it can be seen as a bad trait or whatever if I have, and I have on multiple occasions double booked myself.
Yeah.
And I will have things with one friend and something else with another friend, and I'm not gonna lie, I pick the one that's most fun. I will, my brain, and it's not because, you know, sometimes you have to look at the moral situation and be like, well, actually, you know, I really want to do this thing, but morally I should do the other thing because that's more important to the other person.
Yeah.
But sometimes your brain just doesn't let you, and it's just like, no, you're doing that fun thing because that's going to be fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it can affect relationships as a result because you can essentially come off as a bad friend.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, I've kind of quite the opposite way in that my RSD, which is rejection sensitive dysphoria, again, if you would like to find out more information about this, there's a really good episode. I'm going to mention them again. The ADHD Adults.
They're brilliant,
podcast.
so they deserve a
They
mention.
really, really go into it. So, you know, find out about all of that. But for me, my rejection sensitive dysphoria is probably the biggest driving force in my life, actually. And so I'm constantly worried that I'm going to... I don't know, it's not rejection as such, but I just feel like I'm in trouble, I'm going to upset somebody, and so then I take on quite a lot of responsibility that isn't mine, and I think that I have to reply to messages immediately or be at a thing even if I've got no money and I'm dying of a cold and whatever else, I will be there because I've said I would, and if I wouldn't they would think I was the most awful, you know, crazy stuff. Whereas, you know, somebody, a neurotypical person who didn't suffer from that quite so acutely would just be like, I'm busy today.
Yeah.
I'll get back to them, or I can't make it today, and it's no big deal. Whereas for me, you know, at worst, sometimes even sending an email is a terrifying thing because I think if I get this wrong,
I'm a yes
the world
person.
could
I want to
end,
please everyone, and I
Yeah.
want to keep everyone happy, and I want everyone to like me, and so because of that, it's just like, you know...
And I think that's backed up by then having low self-worth, right?
Yeah.
Because your brain is going to constantly try to look for evidence to back up the stories that it tells itself and its beliefs. So then,
validation.
So then if you were going to be seen as a bad person, well then it's right. See, I am a bad person. That's how I feel about myself. And these are the stories we tell ourselves. God, it's fun and games, isn't it? But let's turn it around. Tell me, Dawn, what is your superpower? And you can have more than one.
My superpower... my ability to see the good in everything.
Yes.
I think that is in fact, that's it, nailed on the head.
That's fantastic.
My ability to see the good in everything. Like, people look at the negatives, and I'm just like, no, look at the positives.
That's fantastic.
So that's mine. What about you?
So I was thinking about this really hard, and I think that my superpower is that I'm really, really good in a crisis.
Yes.
And I have actually read something about that, but as ever, I don't have it stored in the memory box. But and I always just thought that was due to past trauma, that I was used to being in this kind of heightened state of, oh my God, what do we do now? And being able to think really clearly. But it is actually an ADHD trait.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
So I guess that's when, you know, if we were to think about it, like we were saying before about hyperfocus and the last minute, like this is the last minute, like here we are right now, what can we do? But also it means that I am incredibly flexible, as I've said before, with the plans changing. So do you want to go and do this random thing? Yes, I do. And the fear of doing it isn't going to put me off doing it. It's possibly going to drive me on.
Yeah.
But actually, that sort of made me think about when we were talking about doing all this and doing the podcast. You know, I was so at one point very present on social media, and I kind of backed away a bit, and I suddenly felt really afraid of like putting myself out there again.
Yeah.
And we both sort of came to the conclusion that as we feel the way that we feel anyway, what bloody difference does it make to how we feel? We might as well do something good, use what we know, put it out into the world. And if people talk about us and criticize us, like, they sort of do that anyway.
Well, that's it. The thing is that, like, we talk about ADHD a lot, and I mean, I'm very vocal about it around my friends, around my colleagues. Like, I guess it's an ADHD symptom of mine that I hyper focus on the fact that I have ADHD, and I talk about it, and I'm hyper aware of everything that I do now and what's related to ADHD. And I've totally lost where the point of where I was going.
Do you know what though? The problem is I have as well. What? And I'm not even joking.
I'm going off on one, and I don't really know where we're going.
What were we talking about?
What I was going to say.
What was that? What did I say before?
You were talking about the your ability to
But in a crisis.
In a crisis.
Oh, and we said, okay.
And what I was going to say is it's funny because I recently discovered I have ADHD, and so
Did you mention that?
yeah, might have mentioned that once or twice. And funnily enough, my oldest brother, he also found out that he had ADHD recently, which kind of annoyed me because he managed to get his diagnosis a lot quicker than mine.
Oh, but of course.
Exactly. But we don't need to go into that right now.
We've been there.
But we've discussed, ADHD, they say, is a hereditary thing.
It can be.
It can be, yes. And we've discussed which one of our parents we think has it. Of course, sorry, Mum. And yeah, Dad's up in heaven, so yeah, he might be listening as well. But yeah, sorry, guys. So he thinks it's from Dad's side, and I think it's from Mum's side. Whenever I speak to Mum about having ADHD, she's like, yeah, but I'm like that, just constantly. Yeah, but I'm like that. And I'm like, well, maybe you're like that because you have it.
Well,
and he thinks it's Dad's side. And when you talk about the urgency thing and working good in a crisis and under pressure, my dad was a paramedic.
yes, yeah, exactly.
And, he was good at his job, and he worked very well in crisis.
Well,
so
when I was diving, like, I always said it's so funny because being underwater is the only time that my brain is completely clear and that I'm able to be present. And so, obviously there's so much to be said about scuba diving being so good for relaxation. Let's just backtrack. I shouldn't have been doing it, but I didn't know I had ADHD for a start. But, actually what we're really talking about, along with all the calming effects and the beauty and the breathing and how relaxing it is that the only time that I could be present was when there was an imminent danger of me drowning.
Yeah, absolutely.
the reality of the situation. But just to go back to what you were saying, I don't know how you feel about this, and I don't think it's my place to out anybody, but on reflection of my romantic relationships, as we sort of touched on in the last episode, we talked about how neurodivergent people tend to congregate together, and perhaps it's like a wavelength thing. And so on reflection, I kind of feel like X is, I'm not going to say it, it's not fair to say it, but you see where I'm going with this. And when I look at people who one of the partners in a relationship is ADHD, obviously there is a lot of research to say that can sort of turn into a parent-child sort of relationship. But also, I would argue that if you're in a long-term relationship to the point that you're getting married, having children with a person, and you are neurodivergent, there's every chance that they probably are as well, just in a different way. And with what you were saying, sorry, I literally feel like I've been talking for 50 years and I haven't come up for air. But with in terms of how you get it, it's still like, again, this is my understanding from my own personal research that I have done. As the disclaimer said, we are not doctors, and we are totally up for anybody telling us when we are wrong and learning, because as we've said, we are at the start of this journey and we're going on this journey with you, whoever is listening, and together. So I'm not saying that I am any kind of authority in this, but my understanding is that it can be hereditary, and then the percentages go up if you have a sibling that does get diagnosed, then you have a higher percent, however many times over, of you having it too. But also it can come from premature birth, childhood trauma, and there are some others that I can't really, like smoking, pregnancy. There were lots of different things, but in terms of like childhood trauma, like how many of us have that?
Exactly.
So I just personally feel that, the more awareness that is out there, because I think that even though we have the statistics, when you really break it down, I think that the number I personally feel like the scope is huge.
Absolutely.
Absolutely huge.
I mean, where I
have all three, by the way. Patrick. This is a quick interruption from the future. It's Laura here. I just wanted to let you know that Dawn stepped down from the podcast to give her all to her degree in October 23. She explains all in the Series 2 episode called It's Always Darkest Before the Dawn. From that point, I continue ADHD AF solo and I'm about to start the 3rd UK tour, which will actually be the last of this nature. I would love to meet you in real life at Alien Nation. The ADHD AF live events are to connect local ADHDers, raise ADHD awareness, and they start in April 2024 and finish in July in Scotland and England. Undiagnosed ADHD made me feel alienated from society. The shows, featuring very special guests from the podcast, explore going from feelings of alienation to discovering an alien nation. Tickets are available via the link in the blurb of this episode, also via the link in bio on ADHD AF podcast Instagram. I really hope to see you at these totally unique events, the last ever ADHD AF tour of this nature. Self-diagnosis is valid, no diagnosis necessary, and I invite you to encourage the people in your life that need to learn more about ADHD from a late diagnosed perspective. So come along. Adults only, all genders welcome. If you'd like to come but you feel nervous about coming alone, please don't. Just let me know and I will arrange for a welcome party to greet you at the door and seat you with others just like you. I don't want you to miss out on the last hurrah, so grab tickets whilst they last and come hang with the gang in real life. If undiagnosed ADHD made you feel like an alien, you are not alone. There's a whole planet of us. If you can't make any of the live events or you would like to connect online sooner, come and join us in the Planet ADHD AF peer support community via the link in the description to chat to myself and a whole load of other like-minded legends the world over on Discord and Zoom. Membership includes body doubling, accountability squads, a self-care club, monthly advice from an ADHD coach, blogs, vlogs, behind the scenes content, exclusives, and discounts on all merch, downloadables, and events tickets. I really hope to chat to you soon, either online in the Planet ADHDF peer support community or in real life at the Alien Nation tour. Big love. So, Shall we go back to our superpower business? What makes it not feel like a superpower? I guess we've kind of covered that in terms of control.
Yeah. Lack of.
Yeah. And is there anything that you would like to add to that? Are there any other things that make it not feel like a superpower? Well, obviously there are, but like that you would like to elaborate on?
I mean, just there's so many things in my day-to-day life that make it feel like not a superpower. Like we spoke about task paralysis, and it's not just getting things done, like, you know, a deadline or work or uni work and stuff. But task paralysis for me is the inability to get out of bed in the morning. And that is one of my lifelong struggles. I long to be the morning person that when the alarm goes off, I can get out of bed and I can go downstairs, turn the kettle on, do my breakfast, listen to the news, just have a nice morning, go to the beach, watch the sunrise, and all of these things. And some of you listening might be aware that I did 100 days of swimming in the sea.
100 dukes.
Every single day for 100 days, I was in the sea.
Because we are blessed to have the sea on our doorstep.
Yeah, and I did that as part of going through life coaching and trying to form new habits to get me up in the morning. And I very much, nothing's changed. I still struggle to get out of bed in the morning. And it was probably, that was a big turning point for me into the realization that this is definitely ADHD.
Yes.
This was before my diagnosis, but I did 100 days getting up every day in the sea. And as soon as 100 days were done, I didn't go back in.
You hyper-focused on getting that task done.
Yeah. And and the other thing is there was external pressure pushing me.
Yes, 100%.
So getting myself out of bed, I can't do unless there's something pushing me. So unless it's like work, and it's usually I'm late for work because I will leave it to the very last minute, knowing that it takes me 15 minutes to get ready for work and out the door and to work, where this was in my old job. When in reality, it's taken me 15 minutes once to get there on time and it worked. But only once.
Yeah.
And I've never been able to do it in 15 minutes again because it was the traffic was on my side that day. But I leave everything to the last minute. the external pressure there is pushing me, and I get it done. But I want to be able to get out of bed without that pressure.
But there also has to be a level of acceptance, right?
Yeah.
So here we are, and this is what we've got. This is what we're working with. So another thing that social media is really good for is there are a lot of people that are offering tips and tricks. I've seen things like Zoom meetings for body doubling and things like that, just for accountability. So there are things that can be done, and we definitely had a day, didn't we, where it's like you had to get something done and I had to get something done, and I was like, right, like WhatsApp and you from across the road, we're going to get this done in an hour, you know, things like that. So I don't know, flogging a dead horse isn't the right analogy, but you know, if you are up against something and it is as a result of your ADHD, then instead of, like we said before about compassion, you know, you're not just going to be able to fix this actually. You need to find some external way of getting things done. And if that is like me, you know, acknowledging when it is time for coursework that I am going to leave it for the last minute, but I know that it is going to get done. Or whether it's setting yourself a challenge like Dawn's fundraiser. And the accountability that took, or body doubling, whatever. Like you can find solutions, and there are a lot of people offering ADHD coaching services. It's not a route that either of us have been down yet, but potentially along the line I would look into it. But yeah, like I said, we've only just started, haven't we? Yeah. So yeah.
But for me, like, I'm aware that external pressure pushes me.
Yeah.
So I'll say to myself, like tonight, for example, I'm going to get up at sunrise and jump in the sea. And I know as I'm saying that to myself, how can I make that happen? Because I know that if I just say it to myself,
I'll do it with you.
It won't happen. But if I arrange someone to do that with me, then I will do it. So I know the tools that I have to use to get me to do something. And so where I have the ability now is...
exactly.
I know this.
Right.
I know.
Yeah, exactly. So that, you know, that in and of itself is another example of like why having a diagnosis is so important. Like we talked about is, you know, even though the criteria is met the same, we talk, you know, there's a lot of talk about how it presents in men, how it presents in women, and that is not a one size fits all. You know, Dawn showed more characteristically male ADHD hyperactivity, whereas I was the more stereotypical female idea of which we are only just learning about of ADHD.
And yet I still went undiagnosed for all these years.
Exactly. But just because it didn't seem like something that a woman would have, a girl would have.
It was a little boy's disease when I was a child.
Yeah.
So.
But then with getting a diagnosis and then having that self-compassion, it was self-inventory to actually sit down and go, right, what is it that I struggle with? What are my problems? And then
what can I do to help?
Trying to find solutions. But yeah, as you say, we're still in the trenches. We're only just, at the start, really, finding our way. Should I answer that? What makes it not feel like a superpower?
You probably should.
I should probably answer that. What makes it not feel like a superpower? I mean, so many things. Like, it's like I say, oh God, I'm really repeating myself now and getting really inarticulate. But like, it's been a long old journey and I'm only just at the start of this new chapter. But I would say probably the hardest part for me has always been relationships and feeling overwhelmed by them or feeling resentful or it just feels like such a minefield. And that's not fun. You know, to constantly feel like you have to be a certain way to be accepted, whilst also sort of biting your tongue and putting up with behaviour that you wouldn't necessarily do yourself, but secretly feeling like so hurt because you would never do that. And all of that stuff is just, so much noise in an already very noisy brain.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what shall we come to next is our differences.
We're going to talk about our differences again. So basically this week we want to touch on telephones.
And communication.
And communication. So when it comes to phones, I have got a bit of a love-hate relationship with my phone.
That we can agree on.
Yeah. Oh, I really do. It's an addiction.
Yeah.
It's 100% an addiction, and I can lose myself on my phone for hours, and
that's because of like the colours and the dopamine hits
from mindlessly scrolling through videos and
just numbing out, zoning out. Yeah.
Absolutely. But when it comes to messaging people, I will get messages from people, and I know that if I read that message and I don't reply straight away, that they're never going to get a reply.
Yeah.
So I'll try and leave messages unread as opposed to reading them, because I will forget. So my phone's full of like unread messages that I've never gotten back to people with and whatnot. But yeah, if I message back straight away, great. Which tends to, be a bit detrimental, because I've always got my phone in my hand, and I'm always like, even if it's in the middle of a conversation, I'll be interrupting my friends from a conversation because I'll get a message and I'll instantly go and just read it, get distracted, start replying straight away, and they're like, Dawn, I was talking to you, and I'm like, oh, sorry. But the communication thing, it's just you're
I'm the opposite.
Yeah.
So I'm just like so involved. I feel like everyone's life is my responsibility. I have done at times anyway. Like I'm much better now. And I definitely think, I was just thinking then when you were talking about that, how like obviously having left Ibiza and a whole community and loads of friends that I really, really miss, coming to the UK and then moving to Scotland, what I found sort of double weird about phones is that on the one hand, it's very difficult because I would be distracted from my work, working from home. So I wouldn't, when you're trying to engage your brain and you get distracted and you're trying to come back and then you're distracted again, you're sort of never making any forward ground because you're never getting past that first bit. And beyond that, in trying to put my roots down in a new place and discover what life is going to look like for me here, I found it really difficult to still be so involved with so many other people's lives that aren't here, because it literally takes my brain to another place.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's quite difficult, and I found particularly WhatsApp is just such an anxiety thing for me, because people an anxiety thing Dawn, because it's like it just has this real sense of immediacy, whereas in terms of like getting an email, you could get back to that in a day or 2 days or 3 days. A WhatsApp message, you are literally meant to get back to that now.
And it doesn't help that you've got like, I know you can turn certain features on and off, but you've got it tells you if someone's read the message.
Yes.
It tells you when that message was received, etc., etc. And so there is that urgency to get back to someone straight away, because you know that they've seen that you've read the message, and so you feel guilty for not.
And we're all so involved in each other's lives, the people that are closest to you, that then they actually know what you're up to. And I'm sure that it probably doesn't get this far, but in my RSD riddled mind, I'm then like, well, I have to get back to them because they know that I'm not doing anything else today. I'm doing this, or I'm going to be there, so I have to get back to them. And it just, there have been times where I've literally wanted to throw my phone out of the window. I must note, actually, it is quite the phone thing is quite a big one for ADHD. It's a common problem to have, with either being fully addicted to it that you can't put it down,
which is me,
not being able to get back to people, which I do, but I don't like. I do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So with all of that said, the differences are done. So what is the most ADHD thing that you have done this week, Dawn?
The most ADHD thing I have done this week, I did have one and it's completely gone. There it is. Is forgetting. No, what it was essentially eating is what I was going to talk about. I have been so consumed with trying to do our website and get everything else done, and like hyper focused on this and everything else that I'm busy with in life at the moment, that I have struggled to eat.
Yeah.
I basically...
Well, there becomes no structure to your day because
yeah,
you're so... Yeah.
I struggle with structure anyway. And so when I forget to eat, I lose track of time. And then, yeah, I don't remember the last time I actually had a proper hot meal. And that's not good.
It's basic self-care.
Yeah.
Being able to feed yourself.
So there have been a few munchie boxes ordered late at night because I'm like, I am starving. And that's when it becomes a problem because I'll go from not eating till 4 o'clock in the day or later, and then to being absolutely famished that I'm just like, right, I order food in. Food I can't really afford to be buying. I'm a student.
Yeah.
And so all this impulsive stuff just happens because of the hunger. So I order food that I can't really afford. I eat food that I shouldn't really be eating. And I binge and eat so much that, it's just... it's basic self-care, and I'm taking that away from myself.
Yeah.
It's not,
And that's
not great.
No, it's really not great. And it's something that so many people with ADHD really struggle with. So we're definitely going to talk about that next week, aren't we? Self-care is a whole
self-care.
topic. It's funny because mine is around the same thing in that it's about what we've managed to achieve in a really short space of time.
Yeah.
With ADHD AF. In that we have completely and utterly hyper-focused on it. And we've both got like different sets of skills. And Dawn like is an absolute whiz with technology. So she's like literally making this whole podcast thing happen, which is incredible.
I'm learning as I go, though, a lot of it.
Well, yeah, but really, she's so fantastic. But what it means is that we have been really, really consumed with it. And yeah, it's just quite funny because the concern is then like, okay, are we going to be able to keep this up? Or is this just our latest hyperfixation?
Yeah. That is a worry. And definitely for me, like I know that I go into everything. And I think this is a really positive thing. It's like
100%.
I go into things guns blazing, just, I'm...
All or nothing.
All or nothing, yeah. When I started uni, I was the same. Like, my first semester results, I got an A, because I just went in and gave it 100%. But even though going back into second semester, I know that the potential to get that A has dropped significantly because the motivation...
You'll still get it.
I don't know. The motivation over time wanes, and, yeah, I lose speed.
Momentum.
I lose momentum.
Being able to, like an unsustainable energy level.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
and that is the fear here with this podcast, is that we are going like the clappers.
Yeah.
But when is it going to start to teeter off?
But maybe it won't, because the point is, it's about what you're interested in.
And we're talking about ourselves, which I do.
I talk so much that we had to cut huge chunks out of the first bloody podcast, so I couldn't shut up. I had like zoned out and just my mouth was moving, but I left my body. So yeah, I think that in terms of something that we both really, really care about, like that level of energy is potentially sustainable, hopefully, as long as people are nice to me and I don't fall down a hole of RSD nonsense, please.
Well,
God.
that's it. Like, I just want to be understood. I feel like I've spent my whole adult life really misunderstood.
Yeah.
And I guess again, it's part of this seeking approval and people pleasing and stuff. I want people to understand me. So, yeah. Here I am. Understand me.
Oh yeah, I think everyone can relate to that, but I think as neurodivergents, like we can definitely all kind of stick together and really understand that one. I think.
Yeah.
But yes, I think that has brought us to the end. I think. Mm-hmm. Have we done another podcast? I think. I think so.
Yeah, that's episode 2 in the bag.
Oh wow! Gosh, on a roll. Should we do episode 3 now then? Keep momentum going.
Let's leave it a little bit. I've not eaten. I need to go eat.
Thank you so much for listening, and please remember self-compassion and kindness, and please grab your tickets for Alien Nation Live UK Tour via the link in the blurb of this episode, and come hang with the gang in real life or in the online peer support community Planet ADHD AF. Yay, thank you.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye. That's number 2 done.
Did we just do that in one take?
Yeah.
What the fuck?
ADHD as females, ADHD